They used to call me the Iron Gavel. 35 years on the bench, and I never once let emotion cloud my judgment. I was the kind of judge who believed the law wasn't just rules on paper, it was the backbone of society. Bend it once, and the whole thing starts to crack. In my courtroom, there was no room for stories. No room for tears. Just evidence. Statutes. Precedent. That's how I kept order. That's how I kept the chaos at bay. People respected me. Some feared me. And to be honest, I was fine with that. I didn't need to be liked. I needed to be trusted. I needed that robe, that gavel, to mean something. But I'll tell you something I've never admitted out loud. Behind all that discipline, behind all those cold verdicts, there was a man. A father. A husband. A broken heart in a suit and tie. My daughter, Lillian, died when she was 9 years old. Leukemia. The kind that doesn't give second chances. She had the brightest smile. She'd twirl around in her little yellow dress and tell me she was going to be a dancer. She was afraid of thunderstorms. Always came running into my arms when the sky rumbled. Called me her hero. And when she got sick, I tried everything. Every doctor. Every clinic. I emptied savings accounts, sold off family land, wrote letters to people in high places. None of it mattered. I held her hand the night she left this world. Told her I loved her. Promised I'd be strong. And I was. But not in the way people think. After she died, I didn't collapse. I didn't disappear. I got quieter. Colder. I stopped going to church. Stopped visiting friends. I buried myself in the law. Because in the law, everything made sense. There was right. There was wrong. And if you followed the rules, you were safe. I clung to that. Like it could protect me from ever feeling helpless again. So when people came into my courtroom with tears and excuses, I shut it down. I didn't want to hear about childhood trauma or bad luck or poverty. I saw it all as noise. Distractions. The law was the only thing that didn't lie. And then, Marcus Hill walked into my courtroom. 17 years old. Quiet. Thin. Looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. The charge was armed robbery. He'd broken into a pharmacy in the middle of the night. Didn't steal cash, just medicine. Insulin. Morphine. Antibiotics. The security camera caught everything. He used what looked like a gun. Later turned out to be a toy pistol painted black. But under state law, it didn't matter. Armed is armed. That meant 12 years. No parole. I thought it would be another routine case. Another number in the system. Until I saw the note. It was left behind on the counter. Written on the back of a crumpled grocery receipt. I'm sorry. My sister is dying. I didn't know what else to do. That line hit me like a punch to the gut. But I tried to shake it off. I'd seen manipulation before. Desperate people say all kinds of things. But then I looked at him. And I saw what he was holding in his hand. A photo. Old, worn, folded at the corners. A little girl in a hospital bed, smiling weakly. I didn't need to ask. I already knew that was her. His sister. And in that second, something cracked in me. I remembered Lillian. Her smile. Her eyes when she was scared. I remembered how I would have done anything, to save her. I stared at that boy and I didn't see a criminal. I saw myself. Not the judge. Not the title. Just a father, powerless in the face of something bigger than him. For the first time in over 3 decades. I questioned everything I believed about justice. Because in that moment, the law felt small. And mercy, the very thing I'd rejected for so long, felt like the only thing that made sense. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my study, the file open in front of me, the the photo of that girl burned into my mind. Marcus Hill, 17, no priors, honor roll student. Parents both gone. Sister, terminal. Only family he had left. I kept rereading the note. That one line wouldn't leave me alone. I didn't know what else to do. God help me, I understood him. And that terrified me. Because understanding meant I was getting close to something I'd sworn never to let in, empathy. The very thing I'd trained myself to suppress. I thought about the law I had lived by, built my entire identity around. It said Marcus was guilty. It said he was dangerous. It said he deserved to be locked up. But my heart told me something different. Still, I was a judge. I had a duty. Precedent. Statute. I wasn't there to feel, I was there to rule. So the next morning, I put on my robe, like I had 1,000 times before. I walked into that courtroom, raised my gavel, and looked that boy in the eyes. He didn't plead. Didn't cry. He just stood there. Silent. Shoulders hunched like someone waiting for lightning to strike. The prosecutor laid it all out. He broke into a pharmacy with a weapon, he said. This is not a mistake. It's a felony. The defense tried to argue the context. It was a toy gun, he said. No one was hurt. He left a note. This was a cry for help. The courtroom was quiet. Everyone looked to me. They expected me to do what I always did, deliver the hammer. Impartial. Cold. Final. But I couldn't. I looked at Marcus and saw a kid who had tried to save someone he loved. The way I had once tried and failed. The difference was, he had taken action. Wrong, yes. Illegal, absolutely. But not evil. Not malicious. Just desperate. And I thought, what kind of world punishes desperation with a cage? So I stood up. And I spoke. Slow. Clear. Careful. Marcus Hill, the law says what you did was a felony. And it was. But laws are written by people. And people have hearts. Yours wasn't trying to harm, it was trying to save. I paused. The courtroom was frozen. This court is choosing mercy. A gasp rippled through the room. I sentenced Marcus to 1 year of community service, working at that very same pharmacy. Learning. Giving back. Building trust. The prosecutor objected. Loudly. Claimed I was abusing discretion. Said I was making a mockery of the law. Maybe I was. But it felt right. For the first time in years, it felt human. That day, something in me changed. Not all at once. Not like a thunderclap. But like a slow thaw. Like ice breaking after a long, bitter winter. I knew I would pay a price for what I did. But I also knew this. If I had done what the law demanded, if I had sent that boy to prison, it would have been legal. But it wouldn't have been just. And isn't justice the point? The backlash didn't take long. By that evening, my phone started ringing. Reporters. District officials. A state prosecutor from the Capitol. All of them wanted the same thing, an explanation. The headlines were brutal. Judge breaks protocol for robbery suspect. Is justice becoming soft? Some even questioned my sanity. Said I was losing control of the bench. That I'd let emotion compromise the law. And maybe I had. The state ethics board announced an immediate review. They wanted to investigate my conduct, determine whether I had violated my oath. Whether I had allowed personal bias to influence a ruling. The irony? They were right. I had been biased. But not in the way they thought. Not for Marcus. I was biased toward humanity. I kept waiting for Marcus to slip up, for him to prove them all right. But he didn't. He showed up to the pharmacy every day, on time. Stocked shelves. Took out trash. Learned how medications worked. Built trust. the pharmacist who once pressed charges. He called me personally. Said, "I misjudged that boy. He's one of the hardest workers I've ever had." I wanted to tell the board that. I wanted to defend what I did. But I didn't. Because I knew something they didn't. They weren't really investigating me. They were protecting the system. And to the system, I had become a threat. Not because I'd done something corrupt, but because I had chosen compassion over procedure. Because I'd reminded people that sometimes the law needs a heart. They wanted me quiet. Out. Forgotten. So a few months later, I retired. No farewell ceremony. No speech. Just a box of files and a walk out the back door of the courthouse I had called home for most of my life. I won't lie, it hurt. To be painted as the villain for doing what felt right. To walk away from something I gave everything to. But when I got home, I found a letter waiting in the mailbox. No return address. No signature. Just one sentence. "Thank you for saving my brother." That's when I knew. The law may have turned its back on me. But I had finally done something that made peace with my past. For once, I didn't feel like a judge. I felt like a man who did the right thing. Years passed. I stayed out of the spotlight. Lived quietly. Gardened. Read books I'd never had time for. Walked every morning before the sun rose. No one recognized me anymore, not without the robe, not without the gavel. And honestly, I preferred it that way. But every now and then, I'd think about him. Marcus. I wondered what had become of him. Did he stay on the right path? Did he take the second chance I gave him and turn it into something better? I didn't know. And I tried to let it go. Until, one spring afternoon, I got a letter. The handwriting was neat, careful. The return address said State Bar of California. I opened it slowly, heart beating like I was back in court again. Inside was a graduation photo. Marcus Hill. Older now. Confident. Wearing a suit and tie. Smiling like someone who'd learned how to carry his past without being crushed by it. There was a note clipped to the back. It read, "Dear Judge Granger, you probably don't remember me. But years ago, you saved my life. Not just from prison, but from becoming someone I wasn't meant to be. Today, I passed the bar exam. I'm officially a lawyer. I want to spend my life giving people the kind of mercy you gave me. Thank you for believing in me when the world wouldn't. Marcus." I must have read that note a dozen times. I sat in my chair for hours, just staring at that photo. The weight in my chest, the one I'd carried since Lillian died, lifted, even just a little. He remembered. He became something more. Not in spite of what he did, but because of what he learned from it. And suddenly, I realized this was my legacy. Not the rulings. Not the titles. Not the reputation. Him. The boy who walked into my courtroom as a criminal and walked out as something no one expected. A man with purpose. A man with hope. A man who would one day stand in a courtroom of his own, not in cuffs, but in a suit, and maybe, just maybe, choose mercy, too. I always knew I wouldn't die with fanfare. No ceremony. No plaques. No long eulogies. And that's exactly how I wanted it. When my time came, it was quiet. Peaceful. The way I'd come to appreciate life, not loud, not showy, just real. No headlines followed. No reporters knocking on doors. My name faded from the public just like I had. But the world has a strange way of remembering you when you least expect it. I was gone. But Marcus wasn't. He showed up at my grave the first year. Alone. No cameras. No one watching. Just him, in a simple black coat, holding a folded piece of paper in his hand. He knelt beside the stone and whispered something I never heard. Then he placed the note at the base of the marker and walked away. The groundskeeper said he stayed there a long time. Just sitting. silent. That became a tradition. Every year, without fail, Marcus came back. Always alone. Always with a letter. Some were long. Others, just a few words. You were the first person who saw me. I made partner this year. I hope you'd be proud. I forgave my parents. She survived. The one that stayed with me most simply said, you broke the law to save a life. I keep the law now, because of the life you saved. I don't think many people understood what that verdict cost me. The career. The silence. The loneliness. But he did. He understood. And that was enough. You see, the world tells us that justice is about punishment. That mercy is weakness. That rules are everything. But that's not true. Justice without mercy is just cruelty in a robe. And sometimes, you have to break the rules to prove that they still matter. I wasn't perfect. I made mistakes. I carried regrets. But I also made one decision, one that changed a boy's life. And through him, maybe I changed more than I'll ever know. So no, I don't have awards. My name's not in textbooks. There's no statue of me at the courthouse. But in a box somewhere. In a drawer in a quiet little law office. There are letters. Written to a dead man. From a boy who became everything the system said he never could. And that, to me, is justice.